On November 17th, 2024, at exactly 1:15 in the morning, my daughter collapsed at my front door with $47,000 worth of medical bills she was too afraid to file. Her left eye was swollen shut, her lip split in 2 places, and she had 3 cracked ribs from a man I once called son. I spent 19 of those years as a police officer before my knees gave out and the department pushed me into early retirement. I've been a widow for 4.5 years, since my husband Marcus passed from cancer. And on that November night, when my only child fell through my doorway bleeding and broken, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just said, "Come inside, baby." Then I decided to do something about it. My name is Shirley Prescott, and I want to tell you my story. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. Because what happened in those next 4 weeks wasn't just about saving my daughter, it was about uncovering a truth so dark it would shake our entire town. The knock came during a commercial break. I'd been watching the late news, half asleep on the burgundy sofa that Marcus and I picked out from a furniture store in Montgomery back in 1998. The house was quiet except for the hum of the ceiling fan and the occasional bark from the Hendersons' dog 3 houses down. I'd worked a double shift at the courthouse. I do security there now, 3 days a week, just to keep myself busy and my mind sharp. At 64, sitting still feels like dying slowly. So I work, I move, I stay useful. The first knock was soft, almost apologetic. The second was desperate. I pushed myself off the couch, my right knee clicking the way it always does when the weather turns cold. November in Alabama means damp air that settles into your bones. I grabbed my reading glasses from the coffee table and shuffled toward the front door, thinking maybe it was Mrs. Dorothy Hayes from across the street. She's 75 and sometimes gets confused about which house is hers. "Who is it?" I called through the door. Nothing. Then a voice so broken it took me a moment to recognize it. "Mama, please." My blood went cold. I unlocked the deadbolt, the one Marcus installed himself before he got sick, and yanked the door open. The porch light, a yellow bug bulb I'd been meaning to replace for months, cast shadows across my daughter's face. Maya, my Maya. She wasn't standing. She was on her knees, one hand braced against the doorframe, the other clutching her ribs. Her face, oh God, her face, was a watercolor of purple and black. Her left eye had swollen completely shut, the lid puffy and discolored like a rotting plum. Blood, dried and brown, crusted at the corner of her mouth where her bottom lip had split clean through. She was wearing a thin cotton nightgown. No shoes. Her feet were bare and dirty, as if she'd run through yards to get here. "Mama," she whispered, and then she collapsed forward into my arms. I caught her, barely. At my age, catching a 130-pound woman isn't easy, but adrenaline does things to you. I pulled her inside, kicked the door shut with my heel, and half carried, half dragged her to the couch. "Maya, baby, what happened?" My voice was steady. 19 years on the force taught me how to sound calm when everything inside you is screaming. She couldn't answer. She just cried. Deep, shaking sobs that made her whole body convulse. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a clean dish towel, ran it under cold water, and came back. I pressed it gently to her lip. "Hold still," I said. "Let me see." Under the yellow light of my living room lamp, I cataloged the damage like I'd done 1,000 times before on domestic violence calls. Split lip, deep, would need stitches. Left orbital bone, possibly fractured given the swelling. Bruising on her arms. Defensive wounds on her wrists where she'd tried to protect herself. And when I carefully lifted the hem of her nightgown to check for more injuries, I saw it. A massive bruise covering the left side of her abdomen. Not fresh. This was 2, maybe 3 days old, the edges turning that sickly yellow-green color that means internal bleeding. "Who did this to you?" I asked, though I already knew. I just needed to hear her say it. Maya's good eye met mine. "Brandon," she whispered. It was Brandon. Brandon Mendez, her husband of 5 years, the man who'd sat at my dinner table every Sunday, who'd called me Mama Shirley with that easy smile, who'd helped me replace the gutters last spring when I couldn't afford to hire someone, the man who was beating my daughter. "When did this happen?" I asked, still using that calm voice, that officer voice. "Tonight. An hour ago. He hit me because..." She couldn't finish. Fresh tears streamed down her face, mixing with the blood. Because why, baby? Because of her. Because I confronted him about Vanessa. Vanessa Price. So there was another woman. I didn't have time to process that. Maya's breathing had become shallow, rapid, possible punctured lung. I grabbed my cell phone from the side table and dialed Dr. Patricia Williams. Patricia and I went to Howard University together back in 1978. She's been the head of emergency medicine at Mercy General for 15 years. She answered on the second ring, voice groggy. Shirley, it's 1:30 in the morning. Patricia, I need you. It's Maya. She's hurt bad. All business now. How bad? Possible fractured orbital, split lip needs sutures, significant abdominal bruising, and she's having trouble breathing. Bring her in. I'll meet you at the ER entrance. I hung up and looked at Maya. Can you walk? She shook her head. My car was in the driveway, a 2015 Honda Civic with 140,000 miles on it, but I couldn't leave Maya alone even for the 30 seconds it would take to pull it around. I dialed again, this time calling Eddie's taxi service. Eddie Jackson has been driving cab in this town for 20 years. He's also Dorothy Hayes' grandson and one of the few people I trust. Eddie, it's Shirley Prescott. I need a ride to Mercy General. Emergency. Can you be here in 5 minutes? 4 minutes, he said and hung up. While we waited, I grabbed a blanket from the hall closet and wrapped it around Maya's shoulders. Her teeth were chattering, shock setting in. I held her hand, feeling how cold her fingers were. Her phone, which had fallen out of her nightgown pocket, lay on the floor beside the couch. The screen lit up. 7 missed calls. Brandon, then a text message appeared. If you know what's good for you, you'll keep your mouth shut. Another. Come home now or you'll regret it. I picked up the phone. Maya tried to grab it back, panic in her eyes. Mama, don't. But I'd already opened the messages. There were dozens, hundreds maybe. Threats, accusations, demands. And then I saw one that made my blood freeze. You signed those papers. That land is mine now. Try to take it back and I'll make sure you never see another day. Papers? What papers? Land? What land? Maya, I said slowly. What papers is he talking about? She wouldn't look at me. Mama, please, not now. What papers, Maya? The property transfer for Grandma's land. My mother's land. 12 acres on the edge of town that my mother, Evelyn Prescott, had left to me when she died in 2019. Land that had been in our family since 1947. Land I'd signed over to Maya 2 years ago because I wanted her to have something. To build something. You transferred it to Brandon? My voice was still calm, but inside something dark and cold was settling into place. He made me, Maya whispered. He said we needed it for collateral for his business. He said it was just temporary. But Mama, I saw the papers last week. He transferred it again. To someone named Vanessa Price. And when I confronted him tonight, she didn't finish. She didn't have to. Eddie's headlights swept across the living room window. I helped Maya to her feet, supporting most of her weight. As we shuffled toward the door, I glanced back at her phone, still glowing on the couch. Brandon Mendez, the man who'd stolen my daughter's dignity, who'd stolen my family's land, who'd made the mistake of thinking that because I was 64, retired, and recently widowed, I was powerless. He was about to learn that he'd underestimated the wrong woman. The ER at Mercy General smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. Patricia was waiting at the entrance just like she'd promised, already in her blue scrubs, a stethoscope around her neck. She took one look at Maya and snapped into command mode. Get a gurney, she barked at a nurse. Possible internal bleeding, facial fractures. I want her in Bay 3 now. They wheeled Maya away and Patricia put a hand on my shoulder. Shirley, she's going to be okay, but you need to tell me everything. I did. Quietly, calmly, while we walked to the family waiting area. Patricia's jaw tightened with every detail. Has he done this before? She asked. I don't know. Maya hasn't. We haven't been truly close since she left Baltimore. She stopped coming to Sunday dinners about 6 months ago. Always had an excuse. Patricia nodded grimly. Classic isolation. Surely I have to ask. Do you want me to call the police? Did I? 24 hours ago, the answer would have been yes, automatic. But something in Maya's eyes, that terror when I'd reached for her phone, told me this was more complicated than a simple assault case. Not yet, I said. Let's get her stable first. Then we'll figure out the next steps. Patricia studied my face. You're planning something. I'm gathering information. Surely. Patricia, I spent 19 years cleaning up domestic violence scenes. I know how this goes. We call the cops, Brandon gets arrested, maybe he spends a night in jail, then he posts bail, gets a lawyer. And Maya? I shook my head. Maya gets intimidated. She drops the charges. He walks free. And next time there might not be a next time. So what are you going to do? What I should have done the day she married him. Due diligence. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I'll do a full examination. Document everything. Photos, measurements, medical report. If you decide to press charges later, we'll have what you need. Thank you. But Shirley? She gripped my arm. Be careful. Men like this, when they feel cornered, they get dangerous. I nodded, but inside I was thinking, he has no idea what dangerous looks like. They kept Maya for 4 hours. CT scan showed no internal bleeding, thank God, but she did have 3 cracked ribs and a hairline fracture in her left cheekbone. They stitched up her lip, 8 stitches, and gave her pain medication. By the time we left, dawn was breaking. The sky over Mercy General was that pale purple color that comes right before sunrise. Eddie was still waiting in the parking lot, bless him. He helped me get Maya into the back seat, didn't ask questions, just drove us home. I paid him $50 for a $20 fare. He tried to refuse, but I pressed the bills into his hand. For your grandmother, I said. Tell Dorothy I'll call her later. Back at the house, I settled Maya into my bedroom, the big one at the back of the house with the bathroom attached. She fell asleep almost immediately, the pain medication pulling her under. I stood in the doorway watching her breathe, thinking about the last time I'd seen her sleep like this. She must have been 8 years old, recovering from pneumonia. Marcus and I had taken turns sitting up with her all night, monitoring her fever, listening to her breathe. Marcus. God, I wished he was here, but he wasn't. So this was on me. I pulled Maya's phone from my pocket. I'd grabbed it before we left for the hospital and sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where Marcus and I had eaten breakfast every morning for 37 years, the same table where Maya had done her homework, where Brandon had sat last Christmas, laughing at my jokes, eating my sweet potato pie. I opened his messages again, read them all, took screenshots of each one. Then I went through her call log, 15 calls in the past 24 hours, all from Brandon. But there was something else, a number I didn't recognize, a text from 3 weeks ago. You need to see this. An attached photo showed a document, a property transfer form for my mother's 12 acres, filed November 1st, 2024, transferred from Maya Prescott Mendez to Vanessa Price, for the sale price of $1. $1. My hands started to shake, not from fear, from rage. I set the phone down carefully before I threw it across the room. 12 acres, worth at least $240,000 at current market value, probably more given its location near the new highway extension. My mother had scraped and saved to buy that land in 1947. She was a cleaning woman, worked 3 jobs. That land was her legacy, and Brandon had sold it for $1 to his mistress. I took 3 deep breaths. Then I stood up, went to the hallway closet, and pulled down a banker's box from the top shelf. Inside were all my mother's old documents, the original deed from 1947, tax records, survey maps. I spread them across the kitchen table and started comparing. The signatures on the November 1st transfer form looked like Maya's, but they weren't. I could tell because Maya has this quirk. She always makes the tail of her Y curve back to the left. Has done it since she learned to write in 1st grade. These signatures? The Y went straight down. Forgery. I photographed everything. The originals, the fakes, the screenshots. I had a 64-gigabyte memory card in my old digital camera, Marcus's camera technically, the Nikon D350. Oh, he'd bought to photograph birds before he got too sick to go outside. I filled that memory card with evidence. By 7:30 a.m. I had 47 photos of Maya's injuries, taken by Patricia, 23 screenshots of threatening messages, 6 photos of forged documents, call logs showing pattern of harassment, medical records documenting not just tonight's injuries, but old ones too. Patricia had found healed fractures in Maya's ribs that were at least 6 months old. I backed everything up to a USB drive, then backed up the backup to a second drive. I've seen too many cases thrown out because evidence got lost. That wasn't happening here. At 8 a.m., I made a call. Mitchell and Associates Legal Services, how may I help you? I need to speak with Anthony Mitchell, please. Tell him it's Shirley Prescott. Anthony and I went to Carver High School together back in 1976. He'd gone on to become one of the best civil attorneys in the state. We'd lost touch over the years, but I knew his reputation: thorough, relentless, and expensive. Shirley Prescott? His voice came on the line, warm with surprise. It's been what, 20 years? 23. Anthony, I need your help. His tone shifted immediately. What's wrong? How much do you know about property fraud and domestic violence? Enough. What happened? I told him. Everything. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then, Shirley, what you're describing isn't just assault. This is systematic abuse, financial manipulation. And if those signatures are forged, which from what you're telling me they are, we're looking at multiple felonies. I know. Do you want to press charges? I want to bury him. Another pause. Okay, but we need to do this right. Can you come to my office today? Bring everything you have. I'll be there at 2. My daughter's sleeping now. I don't want to leave her alone. Understood. Shirley, I'm sorry this happened to your family. Don't be sorry yet. Save that for him. At 10 a.m., there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Mrs. Dorothy Hayes standing on my porch, holding a covered dish. I opened the door. Morning, Dorothy. She pushed past me, that covered dish held out like an offering. Don't you morning me, Shirley Prescott. I saw that taxi pull up at 1:30 last night. I saw you practically carrying Maya to the car, and I saw her face under that porch light. She set the dish on my coffee table, chicken and dumplings from the smell. Now you're going to sit down and tell me everything, and then we're going to figure out what to do about that man. Dorothy Hayes is 75, 5 feet tall, and has lived across the street from me since 1982. She's also one of the most stubborn women I've ever met. There was no point in trying to deflect. So I told her. Not everything. I didn't mention the land fraud yet, but enough. When I finished, Dorothy's hands were clenched so tight her knuckles had gone white. That boy, she said, her voice shaking with fury. That boy sat at my dinner table. I fed him my good Sunday pot roast. I know. And he's been hurting Maya this whole time? Looks that way. Dorothy stood up, straightened her spine. I have something you need to see. She crossed the street to her house and came back 5 minutes later with a USB drive. I installed security cameras last year after someone broke into the Hendersons' shed. They record everything on the street. Motion activated. She plugged the drive into my laptop. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. There was my house, visible across the street. The timestamp read 1:02 a.m., and there was Maya, stumbling up my walkway, barefoot, one hand clutching her ribs. She knocked on the door. You could see her whole body shaking. Then she collapsed. Jesus Christ, I whispered. But Dorothy fast-forwarded. That's not all. New footage. Same camera, different date. November 10th, 2:47 a.m. Brandon's silver Ford F-150 pulling up to my driveway. He gets out, walks to my door, tries the handle. Locked. He stands there for almost 3 minutes, just staring at the house. November 8th, 3:15 a.m. Same truck, same behavior. November 3rd, 11:52 p.m. He's been watching your house, Dorothy said, when Maya's not there. My skin went cold. Why would he? Because he knows you're her safe place. He's been checking to see if she runs to you. 7 times. He'd checked my house 7 times in the past month. Dorothy, I need a copy of this footage. Already made you one. She ejected the USB and handed it to me. And Shirley, I'm testifying. Whatever you're planning, count me in. That girl is like a granddaughter to me. Nobody hurts family. I hugged her then, this tiny woman who'd lived across the street from me for 42 years. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when that bastard is in handcuffs. After Dorothy left, I sat at my kitchen table with all the evidence spread out before me. Photos, documents, footage, text messages. In 19 years as a police officer, I'd worked exactly 127 domestic violence cases. I know because I kept a journal. Every single one. I documented them because I wanted to remember, wanted to learn what worked and what didn't. Out of those 127 cases, you know how many ended in convictions? 19. You know why? Because the system is broken. Because victims get scared. Because abusers have money and lawyers and time. Because judges don't always believe women. Because juries want proof beyond reasonable doubt, even when the proof is written in bruises. But I had something those other cases didn't have. I had me. I called Anthony Mitchell back. Change of plans. I need you to do something before I come to your office. What? Run a full background check on Brandon Mendez. Not just criminal, everything. Credit, employment history, previous addresses, property records. I want to know every parking ticket this man has ever gotten. Surely that'll take a few days and cost about $800. I'll pay $1,600 if you can do it by tomorrow. Consider it done. At 2 p.m., Maya woke up. I heard her moving around in the bedroom, so I heated up some of Dorothy's chicken and dumplings and brought them to her on a tray. She was sitting up in bed, looking at herself in the hand mirror I keep on the nightstand. When she saw her face, she started crying again. Hey, I said gently. None of that. You're alive. You're safe. That's what matters. Mama, I'm so sorry. For what? For bringing him into your life. For Grandma's land. I know you'll never forgive me. I set the tray down and sat on the edge of the bed. Maya, do you know what your Grandma Evelyn told me the day before she died? Maya shook her head. She said, Shirley, that land isn't just dirt and trees. It's proof that we survived. It's proof that even when they tried to keep us down, we rose up and bought our own piece of this country. Don't you ever let anyone take that from our family. I took Maya's hand. So no, baby, I'm not letting this go. Not the land and not what he did to you. Mama, he's going to do nothing, because we're going to stop him first. Maya looked at me with her one good eye. How? By doing what I do best. Investigation, documentation, and justice. I showed her everything I'd gathered. The photos, the messages, Dorothy's footage, the forged documents. When she saw the property transfer, the one selling her grandmother's land for $1, something in her face changed. The fear was still there, but underneath it, I saw something else. Anger. Good. Anger is useful. Anger means you stop being a victim and start being a survivor. What do we do now? She asked. Now? I stood up, collected the tray. Now we get you strong again. Because in a few days, you and I are going to walk into a courtroom, and we're going to take back everything he stole from us. You really think we can beat him? I looked at my daughter, my beautiful, broken daughter, and I thought about all the women who'd sat in police stations, who'd whispered their stories to me over the years. All the ones who were too scared to fight back. Maya, your grandmother bought 12 acres of land in 1947 Alabama as a black woman. Do you know how many people told her she couldn't do it? How many tried to stop her? Maya shook her head. All of them. Every last one. And she did it anyway. That's your blood, baby. That's who you come from. So yes, we're going to beat him. I turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Oh, and Maya, one more thing. Do you know if Brandon has any enemies? Anyone who might want to see him taken down? She thought for a moment. There was this guy, Travis something. He came to the pawn shop a few months ago looking for Brandon. They had a huge fight. Brandon told me later that Travis was crazy, but he seemed really scared. Travis. I filed that name away for later. At 4 p.m., I drove to Anthony Mitchell's office on Court Street. The building was one of those old historic structures, red brick, white columns, built in 1923. His office was on the 3rd floor, wood-paneled walls covered with law degrees and certificates. Anthony stood when I walked in. He was 63 now, his hair more gray than black, but he still had that same sharp look in his eyes that made him dangerous in a courtroom. Shirley. He shook my hand, then gestured to a chair. I've been doing some preliminary research since we talked. Before we go any further, I need to be honest with you about what you're up against. I'm listening. Brandon Mendez runs a pawn shop on 5th Street. On paper, it's profitable but modest, about $120,000 in annual revenue. He pays his taxes, has no criminal record in Alabama, And from what I can see, he's done a good job of presenting himself as a respectable businessman. But, Anthony smiled grimly, but I also found 3 LLCs registered in his name. Westside Holdings, Montgomery Properties Group, and Southside Investments. These aren't just shell companies, Shirley. They're actively moving money. Lots of money. How much? In the past 18 months? Nearly $2.3 million in property transactions. I sat back in my chair. $2.3 million? And here's the interesting part. Most of those transactions involve properties purchased for cash, held for 60 to 90 days, then transferred to other entities for minimal amounts. Classic money laundering structure. So he's not just an abuser, he's a criminal. A sophisticated one, which means if we come at him directly, he'll have resources to fight back. Good lawyers. Maybe even connections we don't know about. Anthony leaned forward. But it also means he has a lot to lose, a lot to hide. And if we can prove he's been using your daughter and your family's land as part of his operation, we can bring the whole thing down. Exactly. But Shirley, I need to ask, are you sure you want to go down this road? Because once we start, there's no stopping. He's going to come after you with everything he has. I thought about Maya's face last night, about her cracked ribs, about the terror in her eyes. Anthony, I'm 64 years old. I've been a cop, a wife, and a mother. I've survived a husband's death, early retirement, and a pandemic that nearly took me out twice. I'm too old to be scared of bullies. So yes, let's do this. He nodded, pulled out a legal pad. All right, here's what we're going to do. For the next hour, Anthony and I built a strategy. It wasn't just about the assault. That was the obvious part. We were going after everything. The forged documents, the fraudulent property transfer, the financial manipulation, and if we could prove it, the money laundering. I'll need statements from Maya, from you, from any witnesses, Anthony said. Medical records, police reports if you decide to file them, and every piece of documentation you can gather about that land transfer. I have most of that already. He raised an eyebrow. Of course you do. Anthony, there's one more thing. I told him about the mysterious text, the one that had tipped Maya off about the property transfer. Someone else knows what Brandon's doing. Someone who wanted Maya to find out. Any idea who? Not yet, but I'm going to find out. As I stood to leave, Anthony handed me his card. My cell number is on the back. Call me anytime, day or night. And Shirley, be careful. You're dealing with someone who's proven he's willing to hurt the people you love. Let him try, I said. The drive home felt longer than usual. Anthony's words echoed. He's going to come after you. I knew what I had to do. That night I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I went to my bedroom closet, the one I'd shared with Marcus, and pushed aside the hanging clothes until I reached the back. There, in a locked case, was my service weapon, a Glock 22 .40 caliber. The department had let me keep it when I retired. I hadn't touched it since Marcus's funeral. Hadn't wanted to. It represented a life I'd tried to leave behind. But sometimes, you have to go back to who you were to protect who you've become. I cleaned the gun, checked the magazine, made sure everything still worked. Then I locked it back up. I wasn't planning to use it, but I needed to know it was there. The next morning, Tuesday, November 18th, I woke Maya at 8 a.m. Get dressed, I told her. We're going somewhere. Where? To see your husband. Fear flashed across her face. Mama, I can't. You don't have to talk to him. You don't even have to get out of the car. But we need to let him know something. What? That you're not alone anymore. 20 minutes later, we were parked across the street from Brandon's pawn shop. The place was called Mendez Trading Post. Hand-painted sign, bars on the windows, the kind of establishment that looked barely legal, but somehow always survived. Brandon's truck was in the parking lot. I took out my phone and called the shop's number. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. Mendez Trading Post. Brandon's voice, casual, confident. This is Shirley Prescott, I said. I'm calling to inform you that my daughter will not be returning to your house. Any attempt to contact her directly will be documented and used against you in legal proceedings. If you need to discuss property division or any legal matters, you can do so through my attorney, Anthony Mitchell. His office is on Court Street. I'm sure you can find it. Silence on the other end. Then, Where is Maya? Safe. She's my wife, Shirley. You can't just, I can and I will. November 17th, approximately 12:45 a.m., you assaulted my daughter, causing multiple injuries including fractured ribs and facial trauma. We have medical documentation, witness statements, and video evidence. If you come near her again, I will file criminal charges. Do you understand? More silence. Brandon, do you understand? This is between me and my wife. No, I said, my voice cold and clear. This is between you and every woman you've ever underestimated. Starting with me. I hung up. Maya was staring at me, mouth open. Mama, I just drew the line, I finished. Now he knows we're not playing around. We drove home. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw Brandon's truck turn onto Oakwood Drive, slow down as it passed my house. Dorothy Hayes was on her porch. She stood up, crossed her arms, and stared at that truck until it drove away. I smiled. The neighborhood watch was in effect. Back inside, my phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Prescott? This is Travis Hartwell. I heard you've been asking about Brandon Mendez. I think we should talk. Travis Hartwell wanted to meet at the Oak Street Diner, a 24-hour place on the edge of town. I told Maya to stay home with Dorothy and drove there alone. He was waiting in a back booth. 45 years old, wearing a faded denim jacket, hands wrapped around a coffee mug. His eyes had that haunted look I'd seen before on people who'd lost someone to violence. I slid into the booth. Mr. Hartwell. Travis, thank you for meeting me. He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo. This is my sister, Jennifer. She died 8 years ago on April 3rd, 2016. The police ruled it an accidental fall down the basement stairs. The woman was beautiful, blonde, bright smile, holding a baby. I'm sorry for your loss, I said. But what does this have to do with Brandon? Because the man you know as Brandon Mendez was married to my sister, except back then he went by his real name, Kevin Hartwell. Everything stopped. Kevin called 911, said he found Jennifer dead. Broken neck. He was devastated, the perfect grieving husband. But Jennifer had called me 2 weeks before, said Kevin was violent. She had bruises, just like your daughter. She was planning to leave. Travis's voice hardened. Then suddenly she's dead from a fall. The police investigated? Barely. Kevin had his story ready, said she'd been drinking. No forced entry, no struggle. They closed it in 3 weeks. He gave up their baby for adoption 6 months later, then disappeared. Changed his name, moved south. I've been tracking him for 8 years. He showed me a Tennessee driver's license from 2015, Kevin Michael Hartwell. The face was unmistakably Brandon. I've been watching him for months, Travis said, documenting everything. That's how I found the land fraud. I sent Maya that text to warn her. What do you have on him? He handed me a USB drive. Bank records showing $2.7 million in suspicious transactions. Property deeds for 17 parcels through shell companies. And recordings. I bugged his pawn shop office 6 weeks ago. He talks to himself, brags about fooling everyone. And Shirley? He's planning something big with your family's land. I need to verify this. Do it fast, because when men like Kevin get cornered, they get dangerous. Back home, I found Maya and Dorothy in the kitchen making peach cobbler. They looked up when I entered. Mama? Who was that man? I set down my purse. Maya, I need the truth. 5 years ago, when you stopped talking to me, where were you? Maya's face went pale. Mama, The truth. I was in prison. The words came out broken. Jessup Correctional, Maryland. 26 months for embezzlement. I had to sit down. Dorothy gasped. The story poured out. 5 years ago, Maya worked as an accountant in Baltimore. My mother was dying of Alzheimer's. Care facility costs were $8,200 monthly. Insurance didn't cover it all. I took $50,000 from the company, Maya whispered. I was going to pay it back, but they audited early. They prosecuted me for maximum sentence. Why didn't you call me? Because you're a cop, Mama. Your daughter is a thief. How could I face you? 2 years. She'd been in prison 2 years, and I hadn't known. I'd convinced myself her distance was natural, that young people needed space. How did you meet Brandon? After release. No one hires felons. I was waitressing in Montgomery. Brandon said he didn't care about my past, offered me a job. She wiped her eyes. 6 months later, I got a letter from the IRS. Said I owed $87,000 in back taxes from money I supposedly earned while in prison. Brandon showed me documents, bank statements, tax forms, all in my name. Someone had opened accounts using my social security number. Brandon created the problem, I said slowly. He said he'd make it go away if I married him, for legal protection. So we married in December 2019, and the tax problem disappeared. Maya's voice broke. I figured out later he'd set it up, but by then I was trapped. He had copies of everything. Said if I left, I'd go back to prison for fraud. My daughter had been carrying this weight for 5 years, had gone to prison trying to save my mother, had married an abuser because she thought she had no choice, and I hadn't been there. The land transfer, I said. Did you sign it? I signed something Brandon said was for a business loan. I didn't know about the land until that text message. When I confronted him, she touched her bruised face. I pulled out Travis's USB drive. Brandon's real name is Kevin Hartwell. 8 years ago, he killed his first wife and made it look like an accident. We have evidence, recordings, financial records, everything. We're going to stop him. That afternoon, I went to find Vanessa Price at 1847 Riverside Apartments, Unit 12B. A woman answered, late 20s, blonde, exhausted, holding a toddler. Who's asking? Shirley Prescott, Brandon Mendez's mother-in-law. We need to talk. I don't know any Brandon Mendez. But you know Kevin Hartwell. Her face went white. She let me in. The apartment was clean but sparse. Bill's stamped final notice covered the coffee table. How much does he have on you? I asked. I don't know what. The property transferred to you for $1. You're not his mistress. You're his accomplice. Vanessa sat down. He said no one would get hurt. My daughter has 3 broken ribs. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't know he was hurting her. The story came out. 2 years ago, drowning in medical debt from her son's premature birth, $143,000 in NICU bills, she met Kevin at a bar. He said he needed someone to hold property titles temporarily for tax purposes. He'd pay off her hospital bills. He paid off $52,000 the first week. Cash. She wiped her eyes. What would you do? Your grandson is alive, but you're drowning, and someone throws you a rope. How many properties? 8, maybe 9? He brings papers, I sign. Every few months, money appears in my account. I showed her Maya's injuries. This is what your tax arrangement funds. A man who beats his wife and killed his first wife 8 years ago. What? I told her about Jennifer Hartwell. Vanessa stood up, paced. I can't go to the police. If they find out I signed fraudulent documents, you're a victim, Vanessa. You can keep being his pawn or help us stop him. If you cooperate, testify about what he made you do, we can protect you. She looked at her son playing with trucks. What do I have to do? Tell the truth, in court. And my son? We'll be safe. I give you my word. Long silence. Then, he keeps files in his basement. Everything. Real documents, real account numbers. He showed me once, said it was insurance. If I talked, I'd go to prison and my son to foster care. Can you get me in? He has cameras. I know how to get around cameras. Finally, Thursday. He has a meeting in Birmingham. He'll be gone 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's enough time. Thursday, November 21st. Raymond Cooper, the PI Anthony recommended, met me at Brandon's house at 9:30. Vanessa let us in, showed us to the basement, then left. Against the far wall, 6 filing cabinets, all locked. Raymond picked the locks in 4 minutes. Inside the first cabinet, property files, dozens. 2,847 Oak Ridge Lane, purchased March 15, 2023. $67,000 cash, transferred to Westside Holdings, May 22, 2023. $1. 1,156 Maple Court, purchased August 3, 2022. $89,000 cash, transferred to Montgomery Properties, October 11, 2022. $1. Classic money laundering, I said. The second cabinet held bank statements, account after account, including one in Maya's name she'd never opened. $127,000 deposited January 15, 2023. $93,500 deposited March 22, 2023. $156,000 deposited June 8, 2023. $218,000 deposited September 14th, 2023. That's $590,000 in 1 year, Raymond said. Where's it coming from? The third cabinet had the answer. Insurance fraud, staged accidents, fake injury claims, inflated damage reports, 23 separate schemes. Total, $3.1 million over 4 years. But the fourth cabinet held the worst. A file labeled Jennifer. Inside, photos of Jennifer Hartwell, bruised and battered, medical records showing abuse, and handwritten notes in Kevin's writing. She's becoming a problem. Too much talking. Need to find solution. Dated March 25, 2016. Jennifer died April 3, 2016, 9 days later. This is premeditation, Raymond said. This is murder. We spent 3 hours photographing everything, every document, every bank statement. Raymond scanned while I photographed as backup. At 1:45 p.m., Vanessa called. He's leaving Birmingham early, maybe an hour. We worked faster. By 2:30, everything was packed, cabinets locked, basement pristine. As we drove away, I looked back at that normal house. Brandon thought his secrets were safe. He was wrong. That night, organizing files at my kitchen table, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? You think you're smart. Brandon's voice. Cold. Breaking into my house, stealing my files. My blood froze. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie. I have cameras outside. I saw you, the investigator, Vanessa letting you in. I glanced at Maya's closed door. If you have evidence of a crime, call the police. Oh, I will. But first, a deal. Give back everything you took and I'll forget this. Keep playing detective and... Well, you remember my first wife? Are you threatening me? I'm promising you. 24 hours. After that, I can't guarantee anyone's safety. Not yours, not Maya's, not that little old lady across the street with her cameras. He hung up. Dorothy. He threatened Dorothy. I ran across the street. Dorothy answered in her nightgown, confused. Pack a bag. You're staying with me. Why? Brandon knows we're coming, and he's desperate. 20 minutes later, Dorothy was in my guest room. I checked every lock, closed every curtain, made sure my service weapon was loaded. Then I called Anthony Mitchell. We're accelerating, I told him. Brandon knows about the files. He's making threats. We move now. Shirley, we're not ready. We're out of time. How fast can you file? Long pause. If I work through the night, preliminary charges by tomorrow afternoon. Just the assault and property fraud initially. The rest takes weeks. File it. Get a warrant. What are you going to do? Make sure he doesn't hurt anyone else while we wait. I hung up and looked at the evidence spread across my table. Photos of Jennifer Hartwell. Bank statements showing millions. Property deeds. And recordings. I plugged in Travis's USB, found the audio files, pressed play. Brandon's voice filled my kitchen. She has no idea. None of them do. They think I'm just some pawn shop owner. They don't know I own half this town. And when I'm done, I'll own the other half too. Another recording. Jennifer was stupid. Threatened to go to the police. Had to take care of that problem. No one suspected a thing. Crying widower, tragic accident. Works every time. He'd confessed. Not directly, but enough. I had him. Tomorrow, we'd file charges, get a warrant, start the legal process that would bring Brandon, Kevin, down. But tonight, I sat at my kitchen table with a loaded gun beside me, protecting my daughter and my neighbor, waiting for dawn. Because sometimes justice takes time, and sometimes you have to be willing to fight for every second of it. Friday morning, November 22nd, Anthony Mitchell called at 7:15 a.m. It's done. Judge Morrison signed the warrant an hour ago. Assault and battery, property fraud, forgery. They're picking him up at 9 a.m. I looked out my kitchen window. Across the street, I could see Brandon's silver truck parked in his driveway, still there from last night's surveillance. Where will they take him? County lockup for processing. Arraignment is Monday morning. Bail hearing immediately after. Surely you need to be prepared. He'll make bail. A man with his resources, his clean record here in Alabama, Judge Morrison will set it high, but he'll pay it. How high? I'm guessing $150,000, maybe $200,000. $15,000 to $20,000 cash to a bail bondsman. Brandon had that in his couch cushions. How long do we have? If he posts bail Monday afternoon, he could be out by Tuesday morning. 3 days, maybe 4. 3 days before Brandon was back on the streets. Anthony, what about the murder evidence? Jennifer Hartwell? That's a Tennessee case from 2016. I've contacted the DA's office in Nashville, sent them everything Travis gave us. But reopening a closed case, especially one ruled accidental, that takes time. Months, maybe years. We don't have months. I know. That's why we're focusing on what we can prove now. The assault on Maya is solid. We have medical records, photos, witness statements from Dorothy. The property fraud is airtight with the forged signatures. If we can get him on these charges, he's looking at 5 to 7 years. 5 to 7 years wasn't enough. Not for what he'd done to Maya, not for Jennifer, not for the 23 insurance fraud victims, not for the $3.1 million he'd stolen. But it was a start. Okay, I said. I'll bring Maya to the arraignment Monday. Shirley, be careful this weekend. Wounded animals are the most dangerous. At 9:47 a.m., 2 patrol cars pulled up to Brandon's house. I watched from my living room window as Officers Williams and Garcia approached the door. Miranda writes, handcuffs. Brandon didn't resist, but as they walked him to the car, he turned and looked directly at my house. Even from 50 yards away, I could see the rage in his eyes. Dorothy, sitting next to me, gripped my hand. He knows. Let him know. He can't touch us now. But I kept my service weapon close that weekend, just in case. Monday morning, November 25th, the courthouse was packed. Anthony had warned me it would be. Domestic violence cases always drew crowds in small towns. People who knew Brandon, who'd done business with him, who couldn't believe that nice man from the pawn shop could hurt anyone. I wore my best church dress, navy blue, simple, dignified. Maya wore gray, her bruises still visible even under makeup. We sat in the front row. Brandon entered in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed. He'd aged 10 years in 3 days. His lawyer, Marcus Webb, expensive suit, slicked back hair, the kind of attorney who defended rich men, whispered in his ear. Judge Morrison entered. All rise. The arraignment took 15 minutes. Brandon pled not guilty to all charges. Webb argued for minimal bail. My client is a respected businessman with deep community ties, no criminal history, and no flight risk. Anthony countered with Maya's medical records, the threatening text messages, the forged property documents. Judge Morrison set bail at $250,000. Webb didn't even blink. We'll post bond this afternoon, Your Honor. As they led Brandon out, he stopped next to our row, looked at Maya, then at me. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yes, I replied. It is. But it wasn't. Not yet. Tuesday morning, Brandon posted bail. By Tuesday afternoon, Travis Hartwell called me. He's on the move. Left the pawn shop at 2 p.m., drove to a storage unit on Highway 82, came out with 2 duffel bags and a locked case. Surely, I think he's running. Where is he now? Lost him near the industrial district, but I'll find him. I called Anthony immediately. Can we revoke his bail? Not without proof he's violating terms, and right now, all we have is suspicious behavior. Anthony, if he runs, I know. I'll contact Judge Morrison, see if we can get an ankle monitor ordered. But surely, legally, our hands are tied until he actually does something. I hung up and looked at Maya, who'd been listening. Mama, what if he comes here? He won't. He's too smart for that. He knows we're watching. But I was wrong. Wednesday, November 27th, 10:47 p.m. I was in the kitchen making tea when Dorothy's security camera alert went off on my phone. Motion detected. Front yard. I pulled up the feed and felt my blood freeze. Brandon's truck, parked across the street. He was sitting in the driver's seat, just watching the house. I called 911. This is Shirley Prescott, 1847 Oakwood Drive. I have an active restraining order against Brandon Mendez. He's currently parked outside my house in violation. Units are en route, ma'am. Stay inside. Lock your doors. I hung up and grabbed my service weapon from the safe. Checked the magazine. 19 years on the force, I'd drawn my weapon in the line of duty exactly 4 times. Never fired it at a person. But if Brandon came through that door... Maya appeared in the hallway. Mama, what's happening? Go to the back bedroom. Lock the door. Don't come out until I say. Mama, now, Maya! She ran. I heard the bedroom door slam, the lock click. Dorothy came down the stairs in her robe. "Shirley, I called Eddie. He's 2 minutes away with his hunting rifle." "Good. Stay away from the windows." I positioned myself in the living room with a clear view of the front door. Gun in hand. Waiting. Brandon sat in his truck for 8 minutes. Then he got out. He walked slowly up my driveway, hands in his jacket pockets, stopped at my porch, rang the doorbell. "Shirley," he called out. "I know you're in there. I just want to talk." I didn't answer. "Come on, Shirley, we're family. Surely we can work this out like adults." Still nothing. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just want to see my wife. That's all. Just let me talk to Maya for 5 minutes and I'll leave." In the distance, sirens. Getting closer. Brandon heard them too. His expression changed. The fake reasonableness dropped away, replaced by cold fury. "You're making a mistake," he said, voice low and dangerous. "You think you know everything, but you don't. You don't know what Maya did, what she really is." The sirens were louder now. 2 blocks away, maybe 1. "Ask her about Baltimore," Brandon shouted. "Ask her who really stole that money. Ask her what she was willing to do to keep it." Red and blue lights swept across my lawn. Brandon backed away from the door, hands raised as Officers Williams and Garcia approached, weapons drawn. "I wasn't doing anything," Brandon said calmly. "Just talking to my mother-in-law." "Sir, you're in violation of a restraining order. Turn around, hands behind your back." As they cuffed him again, Brandon looked at my door one last time. "Ask her, Shirley. Ask Maya what she's not telling you." Then they took him away. After the police left, I found Maya in the back bedroom, curled up on the bed, crying. "Maya, what did he mean? What aren't you telling me?" "Mama, please, what happened in Baltimore?" She sat up, wiped her eyes. And for the next 30 minutes, the rest of the truth came out. The embezzlement wasn't as simple as I'd thought. Yes, Maya had taken the money for my mother's care, but she hadn't worked alone. There was a supervisor, Richard Chen, who'd noticed the missing funds first. He'd confronted Maya, threatened to report her. So Maya had offered him a deal. Split the money, and he'd help her cover the tracks. Richard agreed. For 6 months, they'd stolen together. $50,000 became $87,000, became $134,000. Then Richard got greedy, wanted a bigger cut, threatened to turn Maya in if she didn't pay him $75,000. Maya panicked, went to the company's owner, confessed everything, said Richard had forced her into it, that she was scared for her life. The company investigated, found evidence of the theft, but couldn't prove Richard's involvement. Maya had been careful, kept him off paper trails. So only Maya was prosecuted. Richard walked away, disappeared with his share, $67,000. "I wasn't completely innocent, Mama," Maya whispered. "I stole that money. I involved someone else, and when it all fell apart, I blamed him to save myself." I sat down slowly. "Does Brandon know this?" He figured it out. Found Richard somehow, got the whole story. That's why he had so much power over me. He said if I ever left, he'd tell everyone the truth, that I wasn't just a thief, I was a liar who destroyed an innocent man's life. Was Richard innocent? No, he took the money, but he also didn't force me. I offered. And when I got caught, I threw him under the bus. I looked at my daughter, at her bruised face, her broken ribs, her shaking hands. She wasn't the perfect victim I'd imagined. She'd made mistakes, bad ones, but she was still my daughter, still a woman who'd been beaten, manipulated, and trapped. "Okay," I said finally. "Okay? You made mistakes. You did things you shouldn't have. But Maya, that doesn't mean you deserved this." I gestured at her injuries. "Nobody deserves this. Not for embezzlement, not for lying, not for anything." "But Mama," "But nothing. What Brandon did, what Kevin did, was wrong. Period. Whatever you did 5 years ago doesn't change that. You understand me?" She nodded, tears streaming. "Now here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow you're going to call Anthony. You're going to tell him everything you just told me. All of it. And then we're going to deal with whatever consequences come from that. Together." "What if I go back to prison? Then I'll visit you every week. And when you get out, I'll still be here. Because that's what mothers do." Brandon's trial for assault and property fraud began January 14th, 2025. The prosecution took 3 days to present their case. Medical records showing Maya's injuries: 3 cracked ribs, fractured cheekbone, multiple contusions. Photos of her face that night, purple and swollen. Dorothy's testimony about the video footage. Anthony's presentation of the forged property documents. The defense argued self-defense, claimed Maya had attacked Brandon first, that he was only protecting himself. Claimed the property transfer was legitimate, that Maya had signed willingly. Marcus Webb even tried to bring up Maya's criminal record, painting her as a liar and a thief. But Anthony was ready. He presented the recordings from Travis, Brandon's own voice admitting to manipulating women, bragging about getting away with accidents. When the jury heard Kevin Hartwell talking about Jennifer's tragic fall, the courtroom went silent. On January 17th, after 6 hours of deliberation, the verdict came back. Guilty on all counts. Judge Morrison sentenced him to 12 years, 7 for aggravated assault, 5 for property fraud, to be served consecutively. But that wasn't the end. 2 weeks later, the Nashville DA's office announced they were reopening Jennifer Hartwell's case. With the new evidence, the photos, the notes, the recordings, they believed they could prove premeditated murder. If convicted in Tennessee, Brandon, Kevin, would face life in prison. Travis Hartwell called me the day they announced the reopening. "Thank you," he said, voice thick with emotion. "After 8 years, thank you." "Thank Jennifer," I said. "She's the reason we found him." July 2025. I was on my porch at 7 a.m., drinking coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up. Dorothy was across the street watering her roses. The Hendersons' dog was barking at a squirrel. Everything was normal again. Maya came out, sat beside me. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost. The bruises had healed. She was working now, bookkeeping for a local nonprofit that helped domestic violence survivors. She'd been honest with them about her record, and they'd hired her anyway. "Mama, I got a letter yesterday," she said, "from the Maryland Parole Board. They're reviewing my case. Anthony thinks with the evidence of Brandon's manipulation, my sentence might be reduced or expunged." "That's good, baby." "And," she hesitated, "Richard Chen contacted me, through his lawyer. He wants to meet. Says he's ready to tell the truth about what happened in Baltimore." "What did you tell him?" "That I'd think about it." She looked at me. "Do you think I should?" "I think you should do whatever helps you sleep at night. And Maya, whatever you decide, I'll support you." She took my hand. "I'm sorry I didn't call you. When I was in prison, I thought I was protecting you, but really I was just scared." "I know, but you're not scared anymore, are you?" "No, ma'am, not anymore." That afternoon, Vanessa Price stopped by with her son. She'd started working as a paralegal at Anthony's firm. He'd hired her after she testified against Brandon. Her medical debts were in repayment plans. Her son was in preschool. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for giving me a chance to do the right thing." "You gave yourself that chance. I just opened the door." We sat on the porch watching the kids play in the yard. Vanessa's son, Maya, they were building something with blocks, laughing. "You know what I learned through all this?" I said. "I'm 64 years old. I spent 19 years as a cop, thinking I knew everything about justice. But it took my daughter showing up bleeding on my doorstep to teach me the real lesson." "What's that?" "That justice isn't always clean. Sometimes the victim isn't innocent. Sometimes the hero makes mistakes. Sometimes doing the right thing means accepting that life is complicated, and people are messy, and the truth is somewhere in the middle of all that mess." Vanessa nodded. "And that's okay?" "That's okay, because the greatest victory isn't about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to fight for what's right, even when everything's complicated." Dorothy came across the street with a pitcher of sweet tea. "Y'all having a philosophy session without me?" We laughed, poured tea, sat together in the afternoon sun. My phone buzzed. A text from Travis. "Jennifer's case goes to trial in September. Thought you'd want to know." I texted back, "I'll be there." Because some fights don't end when the verdict comes in. Some fights last years. Some fights you keep fighting even when you're tired, even when it's hard, even when the world tells you to give up. But you fight anyway, because that's what survivors do. On November 17th, 2025, exactly 1 year after Maya knocked on my door, We held a memorial service for Jennifer Hartwell. Travis was there. Vanessa, Dorothy, Maya, Anthony, even Officer Williams, who'd been the first responder that night. We planted a tree in the park downtown, a cherry blossom, Jennifer's favorite. To the women who didn't survive, Travis said, and to the ones who did. We stood in silence for a moment. Then Maya stepped forward, placed a photo at the base of the tree. It was from the night I'd found her, bruised, broken, terrified. "I keep this," she said, "to remember who I was, and who I'm not anymore." As we walked back to our cars, I thought about that night. The knock on my door, the blood, the fear. And I thought about everything that came after, the investigation, the confrontation, the truth. It wasn't a perfect story. Maya wasn't a perfect victim. I wasn't a perfect hero. Brandon got 12 years when he deserved life. But we survived. We fought. We won what we could win. And sometimes that's enough. I'm Shirley Mae Prescott. I'm 64 years old. And I want you to know, if someone you love shows up at your door in the middle of the night, bleeding and broken, don't just comfort them. Document everything. Gather evidence. Build a case. Because the system won't protect them unless you force it to. And remember, at 64, I learned that strength isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway. The greatest victory wasn't putting Brandon in prison. It was watching my daughter smile again. It was sitting on my porch with women who survived. It was planting a tree for the one who didn't. That's justice. Imperfect, complicated, hard-won justice. And it's worth fighting for. The end.